on World News Tonight. International standoff. Russia breaks the stalemate on the Ukraine border by retreating some of the multiple troops ready to take action. However, world leaders are wary of the situation as threats still remain. Reign of terror. 6 months have passed since the Taliban took over in Afghanistan despite false promises to its people. The future of the nation remains uncertain. More on the worsening crisis tonight. Miraculous breakthrough. A medical marvel has been discovered as scientists discovered that the cure of HIV may be in stem cell therapy, leading the way for new possible cures that may rid the world of the virus for good. Stellar celebrations. China commemorates multiple achievements in its latest Lantern Gala, lighting up the country in a beautiful array of patterns while lifting spirits nationwide.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here is Suzanne Shanali.
Good evening and thank you for joining us on World News Tonight. Our top story today still leads with Russia's showdown with Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has finally broken the tense stalemate on the Ukrainian border by causing multiple stationed troops to retreat from the zone, and US President Joe Biden made an impassioned appeal to step back from war with Ukraine, speaking sparkly of the needless death and destruction Moscow could cause, an international outrage Putin would face.
The Russian Defense Ministry on Tuesday released video of what it said were some of its troops returning to base after exercises near Ukraine, leading some to hope the drums of war might be fading. But U.S. President Joe Biden responded that Washington had not yet verified the demobilization and said Russia still very much posed a threat.
We have not yet verified the Russian military units are returning to their home bases. Indeed, our analysts indicate that they remain very much in a threatening position. And the fact remains, right now, Russia has more than 150,000 troops encircling Ukraine and Belarus and along Ukraine's border.
Russia did not say how many units were pulling back. Its deployment of some 130,000 troops to the north, east, and south of Ukraine triggered alarms in Western capitals that a military operation could be imminent. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Tuesday, denied again his country sought conflict.
Do we want it or not? Of course not. This is why we have offered our proposals to start the negotiation process, which should lead to an agreement of providing equal security for everybody, including our country.
Speaking from the White House, Biden said he was committed to finding a diplomatic solution to the crisis, but he warned the Russian people that military aggression in Ukraine would be bloody, costly, and would be met with international condemnation.
The world will not forget that Russia chose needless death and destruction.
While Biden said he would not commit U.S. forces to fight in Ukraine in the event of a Russian attack, he said the U.S. would defend, quote, every inch of NATO territory.
With the full force of American power.
U.S. troops have already begun reinforcing NATO allies Poland and Romania.
It has been 6 months since the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban forces, and despite the promising policies the group intended to administer, the residents of the torn nation worry for their uncertain futures amid deplorable conditions.
Exactly 6 months since the Taliban came to power in Kabul, residents of the capital remain uncertain about their future. A combination of a lack of jobs, assets that remain frozen, as well as an increase in hunger and poverty. Central bank funds have been frozen since the Taliban took over as foreign forces withdrew in August. And this, combined with sanctions and a drop-off in development funding, have sent the country's economy into freefall, unleashing a humanitarian crisis with it. On Friday, the White House said the US was seeking to free up half of the $7 billion in frozen Afghan central bank assets on US soil to help the Afghan people, while holding the rest to possibly satisfy terrorism-related lawsuits against the Taliban. Afghanistan's central bank criticized the plan, calling it an injustice. The Taliban warned it would reconsider its policy towards the US if President Biden did not reverse his decision to return only half the amount.
French President Emmanuel Macron is to announce that French troops will be withdrawn from Mali and redeployed elsewhere in the Sahel following a breakdown in ties with the country's military regime.
Mali's recent expulsion of the French ambassador from the country has called Paris's operations in the Sahel into question. At a mini-summit at the Élysée Palace, the government is set to discuss the future of Operation Barkhane.
The status quo is not possible given the degraded political context in Mali, what with the seizure of power by the junta, the refusal to apply a timetable for democratic return, and the use of a private Russian militia.
The presidents of Niger, Chad and Mauritania, all members of the G5 Sahel, are set to meet with Emmanuel Macron. The meeting is taking place the day before the EU meets the African Union. The bloc's top diplomat Joseph Borrell and President of the Council Charles Michel will also be present. Over the last few weeks, Mali's junta has denounced foreign influence and accused France of isolating the country internationally. The junta has also told Denmark to recall their soldiers in the country, troops that were there to help tackle jihadist violence. The withdrawal has prompted other European powers to rethink their deployment in Mali, including Sweden and Germany. Paris, nevertheless, hopes to convince its allies not to completely pull out of security missions in the Sahel and other regions threatened by Islamist violence, including the Gulf of Guinea.
Ethiopian lawmakers have voted to end the country's 3-month state of emergency early as mediation efforts continue to end the deadly war in the north. The state of emergency was imposed in early November as Tigray forces fighting Ethiopian and allied forces moved closer to the capital, Addis Ababa.
The order was imposed in November and meant to last 6 months. But on Tuesday, Ethiopian lawmakers voted to lift the state of emergency invoked when rebels from the northern Tigray region threatened to advance on the capital. Some MPs said lifting the order would help revive the country's economy, but others said it was premature. The state of emergency gave the government power to detain citizens without charge and search homes without a warrant. Ethiopia's state-appointed rights commission said thousands of mostly ethnic Tigrayans were detained, including elderly people, nursing mothers and children. Police, however, said they only targeted suspected supporters of rebel forces. Fighting has been raging in Ethiopia since November 2020, when the central government sent troops to topple the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Last November, the TPLF seized 2 crucial towns about 400 kilometers from Addis Ababa, but a December government offensive pushed back the rebels. Authorities said they would not pursue the TPLF further, but the Tigray region has been hit hard by drone strikes. According to the UN, the strikes have killed more than 100 civilians since the start of the year.
Honduran ex-president Orlando Hernandez, whose extradition is sought by United States for alleged ties with drug traffickers, surrendered to police after a judge ordered his arrest.
It's a spectacular fall from grace for one of Central America's most powerful men who ruled Honduras for 8 years. Handcuffed and chained, Juan Orlando Hernandez is paraded to the press at a police headquarters. Hours before, as police surrounded his home, Hernandez posted an audio message on Twitter thanking his supporters.
No es un momento fácil.
It's not an easy moment. I do not wish it on anybody. But I am ready to collaborate and voluntarily present myself in order to face this situation and defend myself.
The arrest came less than a month after the former strongman was replaced by Xiomara Castro as Honduran president. She swept to victory in November's election, vowing to end what she called the country's narco-dictatorship and corruption. And the new government and the judiciary were quick to respond to a US extradition request. Washington accuses Hernandez of facilitating drug trafficking and using the millions of dollars he received in bribes to fund his political campaigns. He has been on a US blacklist since July, and his brother is already serving a life sentence in the United States. The move stands in stark contrast to the US government's previous relationship with Hernandez. The right-wing politician, who came to prominence after a military coup in 2009, was long regarded as a vital US ally in volatile Central America. Honduras' Supreme Court has appointed a judge to oversee the case, and it may take several months before any ruling is delivered.
While expected to see a dramatic showdown trial on Prince Andrew's controversies of sex abuse, it may never come to light as the two parties have effectively settled, sparing of any embarrassment to come on the trial and also helping ensure what could be considered justice for the affected.
Britain's Prince Andrew has settled the lawsuit brought by Virginia Giuffre, accusing him of sexually abusing her when she was a teenager in a case that already caused his fall from grace. Queen Elizabeth's second son, who was stripped of military titles and royal duties by his mother due to the allegations, will pay Giuffre an undisclosed sum, according to a court filing in Manhattan. The prince did not admit wrongdoing in the settlement. The settlement spares Andrew, one of the most high-profile names linked to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case, from potentially embarrassing disclosures and accusations in the months leading up to and during a trial. He was just weeks from being questioned under oath in a deposition. Criminal defense attorney Randy Zellin, who was not involved in the case, calls the settlement the essence of a good deal for both sides, as it gives Andrew confidentiality and rewards Giuffre, as victory could have eluded her in a jury trial no matter how steadfast her claims. Andrew has denied Giuffre's accusations that he forced her to have sex more than 2 decades ago at a London home of former Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell and abused her at 2 Epstein properties. Giuffre also claimed she was sexually abused by Epstein. The filing Tuesday said that Andrew, quote, never intended to malign Ms. Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she has suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. It also said Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Giuffre and other survivors for, quote, standing up for themselves and others, adding that he also intends to make a substantial donation to Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. The statement is a marked departure from an interview Andrew gave the BBC in 2019, in which he failed to appear sympathetic toward Epstein's abuse victims and refused to apologize for his friendship with Epstein. Epstein killed himself in a Manhattan jail cell in August of 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking and other charges in December. Buckingham Palace declined to comment on Andrew's settlement.
Welcome back to World News Tonight. We have some good news for you. A U.S. patient with leukemia has become the first woman and the third person to date to be cured of HIV after receiving a stem cell transplant from a donor who was naturally resistant to the virus that causes AIDS. This tells us or confirms that a cure is indeed possible, and scientists need to keep working to find a cure. The case of a middle-aged woman of mixed race presented at the conference in retroviruses and opportunistic infections in Denver is also the first involving umbilical cord blood, a newer approach that may make the treatment available to more people. Expressing optimism for this treatment to become a pathway to a cure, doctors say that this case tells us that if you can make cells resistant to HIV, you can stop the virus coming back. Ottawa's police chief resigned after criticism that he did not do enough to stop COVID-19 protests that have paralyzed Canada's capital city and forced Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to invoke emergency powers.
Freedom!
Protesters maintained their position outside Canada's Parliament as Ottawa's police chief lost his. Chief Peter Slowly is stepping down after facing criticism that he did not do enough to stop the protests, which have paralyzed downtown Ottawa for weeks. A statement from Slowly posted on Twitter read, "Since the onset of this demonstration, I have done everything possible to keep the city safe and put an end to this unprecedented and unforeseeable crisis." But critics alleged that Slowly and other police officers were too permissive in their approach to the trucker-led protests, which have inspired copycat movements across the world and posed a major challenge to Trudeau's government. Many protesters showed up in late January, calling on the government to lift vaccine mandates.
I just think he should step down.
Seeking to beef up policing, Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act on Monday, empowering his government to cut off protesters' funding and reinforce provincial and local law enforcement with federal officers.
I just want everyone to take a deep breath.
Trudeau on Tuesday defended his move during a raucous session of Parliament.
The measured and responsible use of the Emergencies Act that we announced yesterday gives specific time-limited, proportional tools to police of local jurisdiction and their partners to be able to ensure that these illegal blockades end.
But demonstrators in downtown Ottawa vowed to defy Trudeau's emergency orders.
While the death toll of COVID has been seemingly slowing down, it may not be for long as the excess COVID death numbers has risen well past 1 million in the United States, and the toll is still continuing to break past previous records of the virus. We have up there World News special correspondent Nicola Sena-Ratna, who joins us now from New York in the United States for more. Nicola?
Yes, Shenali. The excess death figure surpassed the milestone last week, reaching over 1 million according to Robert Anderson, Chief of the Mortality Statistics Branch of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention National Center for Health Statistics. The center updates its estimates weekly. Although the vast majority of the excess deaths are due to the virus, the CDC mortality records also shows soaring numbers of deaths from heart disease, hypertension, dementia, and other ailments across the 2 years of pandemic misery. The CDC mortality branch official count of deaths of COVID-19 stood at over 900,000 as of today. Anderson said 91% of the deaths from COVID-19 tracked by his unit were attributed directly towards the disease. In the other 9% of deaths, COVID-19 was listed as a contributing factor, but not the primary cause. The CDC documented 13 other types of non-COVID causes of death that were inflated during the pandemic compared with historical trends starting from 2013. For example, since the start of the pandemic, the category of rheumatic heart disease has recorded an additional 30,000 deaths beyond what would be expected. Deaths from hypertensive disease were nearly 82,000 higher than expected. The million death figure highlights the broad reach of the pandemic beyond the direct lethality of the virus itself. Back to you, Shenali.
All right, thank you. That was Derana World News special correspondent Nicola Sena-Ratna reporting from New York in the United States. Things may be looking up for Japan's economy as there was a rise within the final 3 months of 2021. However, there are still uncertainties due to the Omicron's fast spread across the country, leaving future forecasts cloudy.
Japan's economy rebounded in the final 3 months of 2021, but a recent spike in new Omicron infections is now clouding the country's outlook. From October to December last year, Japan's GDP rose by 5.4%, according to new government data released on Tuesday. The increase was in part thanks to a boost in consumer spending as virus restrictions eased in October. Japan's recovery, however, continues to lag behind other advanced economies. It's meant the Bank of Japan has been forced to keep monetary policy ultra loose, even as other central banks eye interest rate hikes. On top of this, some analysts expect the economy to slump again in the current quarter due to rising COVID-19 cases. The government has reimposed loose curbs on most areas and kept borders closed. Some manufacturers have also been forced to halt production, causing output disruptions and delivery delays at auto giants such as Toyota. Meanwhile, creeping import costs add risks to Japan's fragile recovery.
Welcome back to World News Tonight. For more news, let's take you around the world in a minute. Police Police and ambulance services in Australia said a shark attack killed a swimmer off a Sydney beach after causing catastrophic injuries. It was the first fatal shark attack in Sydney since 1963. Heavy rainfall flooded streets and people surveyed the damage in the city north of Rio de Janeiro. A 3-day winter carnival was organized in India's northern Kulgam district of Jammu and Kashmir Federal Territory to attract tourists, promote scenic beauty and tourism in the area. British consumer prices rose at the fastest annual pace in nearly 30 years last month, intensifying the squeeze on households and reinforcing the chances that the Bank of England will raise interest rates for a third meeting in a row. Al-Shabaab militants attacked several police stations and security checkpoints in Somalia's capital, a show of forces as the nation prepares for a much-delayed presidential election. 5 people, 2 of them children, were killed in 2 attacks. And that's all the news we got for you tonight. Join us again tomorrow for more news around the globe. In case you have missed to watch any of the stories we add tonight, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Derana English. We're leaving you tonight with a look into thrilling dancing and singing performances to celebrate the traditional Chinese festival. Thank you for watching us. Good night.